Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners and Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 17th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, coming off a great weekend of sports and controversy, everybody's getting excited about a new week here in the middle of the month.
It's always good to get excited, especially in the middle of the month, because we still got a month to go. You can follow Big C Sports, sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, also powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Fire TV, and a lot of other smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. I also said, did you say we're halfway through the month, Big C? I think are we still halfway through the month? It's Black History Month. Why have we got the shortest month in the union, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they don't want us to celebrate too much other than a great sporting event.
Yeah, just have us shut up and dribble and play sports is all fair in love and war, but we know we're a lot much more than that. I do want to make sure we pay attention and pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. You can get some help. You really need to know this hotline is out there, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you are online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. Big C, why is it so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's important because we always have to find a way to help our people that are in need in our country, and especially those military veterans who have served so admirably, who have come back home, and it's not always been the most gracious of returns and respect from everyday people in America. And they don't understand the sacrifices that these people have made personally as well as their families. And to be able to have a suicide prevention crisis hotline number, Charlton, because so many veterans have taken their own lives because they felt that there's no place to go and no one to talk to, no one that they can lean on. And this prevention hotline number, Charlton, is there for people to assist them emotionally and mentally, to help to get them through those crisis times in life. We lose so many veterans as well as everyday people to this horrific disease called suicide because people want to look at it as an embarrassment on their family instead of a way to try to help people. And so the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is that lifeline to help save people, Charlton.
It really is a lifeline, Big C's Veterans Crisis Line, and their experience in helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. Really looking forward to making sure they help people. Also, the Big C team launching a real estate listing channel spring of 2020. The goal is to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV, and you really make yourself a standout. I was talking to a couple of brokers all over the country today in several states, and they really appreciate the power of television and how it really makes that broker stand out from the other. So I look forward to bringing that in 2020, the spring of 2020. Big C, I know if you're like me, I think they had the Daytona 500 on over the weekend. I know they had some rain delays, and I believe they had a golf tournament down in Southern California, the Genesis Open. But what I really recall paying more attention to is a sport that I know I played when I was a young boy. You didn't need a glove. You didn't need a bat. You didn't need a golf club. You didn't need a football helmet. And sometimes the guys didn't even need shoes. You just found something to shoot a ball through in the NBA All-Star game. It had me captivated for about 3 days, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's the annual event, Charlton, that they have, and now it's moved beyond the mid-season into the two-third point of the season. And I think that's what's going to make it interesting is that the season is shortened now after the All-Star game.
Yeah, it's amazing because I look at so many players, and when they say ratings are down, the ratings are down in the NBA basketball. Ratings are not down. Almost everyone that I've talked to, especially young people, they were not walking around with 50-inch TVs to see, is it Nielsen going to come over and see if I'm watching the NBA All-Star game? They were just going to their phone. In fact, I had missed part of the slam dunk competition when Gordon had jumped over Taco Fall, and I said, oh my God, the DVR cut out, right before the end of it. He said, Dad, just do it on your phone. So he went to the phone in his hand, and he showed me what I missed on television. And I think a lot of the people that do ratings, Big C, they're missing that new technology. Like the newspaper. A lot of them are going out of business. McClatchy News Service filing for bankruptcy. People are reading online. The ratings are not down, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I have to beg to differ on that. I mean, the NBA is honest on that about the ratings being down because their finances are affected by that, Charlton. This is a part of their revenue sharing is based on the ratings, whether they're there on television or not. I mean, it's hard to make the average person as an adult. I mean, you're going to find kids that want to watch things on their phone.
Yeah.
But the person who's paying the bills wants to sit at home and watch those large devices that are hanging on the walls when they're sitting there anywhere from 60 to 100 inches and watch something. I know I would have a hard time personally trying to watch something on my phone. I'm not going to squint. If it's not at least 65 inches, I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah.
So ratings are actually down. You got to believe the numbers on that when the NBA tells you that, and they tell you that from an economic perspective because that's how they make their money, based on the ratings. And if their money is short and it's come from the ratings, because they have the revenue sharing in the league.
Yeah.
And the broadcast networks pay them based on the ratings.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to be fudging those numbers, especially when it comes to their money.
When it comes to them, and that makes a lot of sense, but I would beg to differ. In China, I believe Adam Silver said about 700 million people from China at some point or other had followed NBA basketball. Over 700 million, approximately twice the size of the entire population of the United States of America, and they got to catch up with this too.
But they're saying the same thing about the NFL. Neither one of these leagues are basing their numbers on what goes on in China or in Africa. When they talk about television revenue, they're talking about U.S. revenue. The revenue from those other countries stays in those countries.
Yeah.
The NBA doesn't get revenue from Canada because that's the reason why they don't broadcast their games in Canada.
Right.
It stays with the Canadian corporations. So people viewing in China doesn't create revenue in the U.S.
That's very well said. However, I will say this, and this is coming from a lot of young people. I went into this a couple of decades ago. I was looking for some music, and I think it was called Tower Records. And they've closed almost all of them all over the country, Big C. So I'm thinking as an older person, maybe they don't make music anymore. But the young kids told me, wait a minute, you don't have to go to Tower Records. They pulled it up on their phone, and I think TV's they're gonna try to get the numbers on how many people actually watch the streaming. If you go to Tower Records, you would assume that no one sings anymore. But we all know a lot, like, what's her name, Taylor Swift? I think she's the #1 downloaded artist on iHeartRadio platform, and you can't tell me that she's not making music just because you can't find it at Tower Records. And I think Adam Silver, they gotta get in front of the market, unlike McClatchy News Service that have to file for bankruptcy protection because they stayed behind the curve. I just think the market's up. I really believe that NBA basketball, in my opinion, is so fantastic. And as I watch more and more young people, they're saying where the future is going. They're not going to open more Tower Records, Big C. They're going to keep opening more streaming, Big C. Your thoughts?
But see, those young people cannot afford tickets to an NBA event either, Charlton.
Yeah.
You talk about the Chase Center out there where you are in the Bay Area, and you talk about the absorbent ticket prices. Which one of those young people that has a cellular device in their hand can go up and buy a courtside seat for the Chase Center?
Yeah, it's all fair and love and war. I still think, just like, who was that, the hanging chat? Was it Al Gore and Bush? And they said Bush won? We thought Gore won. He had more votes. But they threw a lot of that stuff away. They got to find a way to track OTT. That's the way things are going in the future. I do want to get on to this great All-Star game, 157 to 155. That was almost like Loyola Marymount back in the day, Big C. If you remember how fast they were scoring playing basketball on the West Coast team, LeBron pulled off the victory, 157-155. And it was Anthony Davis, the hometown hero, that hit one of two free throws, Big C. He said he did it intentional, but to me, I was gripping. It was like coffee back in the day my grandmother drank. It was good to the last drop, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the ending of the game, I didn't like the ending of the game, man. And I didn't watch the entire game because when you think about the ending of a game and the way the format was set out, it was flawed in the end because it comes down to the first team to 157, but it should have to be at least a 3-point victory. If you're going to play that type of format, then you have to have things to make the game totally interesting down to the last shot. To have a game where a guy has to come up and just knock down one free throw and get to the 57, what if the game had been tied at 156 and all he needs is the one free throw?
Yeah.
I think that kind of makes it a little disingenuous. But also in this game, it's not a game any longer. It's an exhibition.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to say, well, it was exciting and compared to a playoff game. Well, in a playoff game, you're not going to get 52 dunks in a game. So when you think about 52 dunks, guys are not shooting from the floor. They're out there just going up to see what type of highlight reel that they can make. So to me, that takes away a little of the competitiveness of the game. I know it's about trying to create excitement with the fans, but you also got to be a devil advocate when you look at this type of situation, that guys are getting free runs to the basket. They're not being challenged. And so when you look at 52 dunks in the game, that right there accounted for 104 points in the game. So a third of the points in the game came off a dunk. More than a little more than a third. About 2/5 of the points in the game came off a dunk. So I would like to see where you're more challenged and you're more rewarded, like with a 4-point shot in the game. You're forced to shoot from the outside, and that there can't be any shots inside the paint. I think that would create more of a challenging game for the players.
They may have that coming up because this is pretty much just it's the first time I think Chris Paul recommended the changes to Adam Silver, and they looked at things, and I'm sure just like you can improve on anything in life, they'll have more things that may change throughout the series of the NBA All-Star Game or exhibition. Whatever you call it, it was really good, especially in that fourth period. Kawhi Leonard became actually out of the LA Clippers. It seems like MVPs tend to follow Kawhi Leonard, last year's Finals MVP. And we know the man's amazing. I think they call him the glove. He had 30 points. He was 8 of 14 3-point baskets, just one shy of the record, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. And he actually became the first winner of the Kobe Bryant All-Star MVP trophies as he led all scorers with 30 points. That's a great honor to Kobe Bryant. And also, Kawhi shows up no matter what it is. Big C, Kawhi's always there when it counts. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he's there when it counts, but, you got to look at the majority of those points came in the first half and really in the first quarter when he was scoring. He didn't score any points in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, when you look at this, an all-star game, and you're looking at MVP, who makes the final decision in the end as far as the voting and how did the voting lay out? Yes, he led all scorers, but those points came early, and they weren't a decisive factor in the fourth when the game was on the line. Yeah,
and when I noticed what I did see, you mentioned he scored a lot in the earlier part. There's an alpha male of alpha males on the court last night, and I think that's for LeBron James from the LA Lakers, the forward, and he had 23 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks. There was a play where LeBron James went to the basket for a layup. This is why a lot of guys dunk, and Giannis actually pinned the ball on the backboard. I thought it was an amazing display of defense, especially in a game where a lot of times players will just pull back and not touch each other. But even with LeBron James, I mean, he just had that mentality, give me the ball down the stretch. But when people say who's the hottest guy in basketball, it was still like Kawhi Leonard trying to take over throughout the game, I think. And then Davis, of course, when he was pulled to the ground by the good old boy from Toronto, Lowry, Big C, and said, what do you mean I pulled him to the ground? But I thought LeBron James had a solid exhibition performance. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the two conferences, Charleston, the East and the West, the Western Conference had a lot more guys that were closers that could score from outside. You think about the fourth quarter, Giannis did not score a point in the fourth quarter. They had guys on the defense on the West closing him out, trying to go to the rim, because Giannis has not proved yet, just like in the finals, in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, that he couldn't shoot from the outside. He needs to get to the rim late in the game. He's uncomfortable shooting from the perimeter. And I think that hurt the East overall. When you look at the players that they had on the floor, they didn't have guys on the floor that could close out games. And that was the difference in the Western Conference, that they have guys that can close out games in the Western Conference. You look, there was no substitution in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
They ran with the guys that were out there. The guys were gassed at the end of the game because there were no timeouts. And so this was a pickup game extraordinaire. This is the same type of game that everybody has played in the playgrounds, like you alluded to when you started.
Yeah.
This is what this was. This was a pickup game. And the referees were confused during the game as far as what to call and what not to call.
Yeah.
I think the way the game was laid out, maybe you might want to eliminate the referees in the fourth quarter. Let the players make the call, just like on the street. You know when it's a foul, you know when it's a not foul, you take it out, throw it in.
You know what? That might be something that Adam Silver listens to. Let the players, but at that same time, no one would ever foul and no one would ever call a charge or a travel. So they're going to have some oversight. And that's a good point to bring up, too. Maybe take away the refs in the fourth quarter. We're doing street ball anyway. Anthony Davis, Los Angeles Lakers forward, 19 points and 9 rebounds, 3 steals and 3 blocks. For him to go back to his hometown of Chicago, that would be, and that's amazing that he was a guy, the last man standing, as you say. But Davis couldn't find the range either from beyond the arc. He was only 1 of 6. He had 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 steals, as we talked about. I don't think they would ever take away shooting in the paint because that would render a lot of men scoreless. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at the big guys, other than the dunks, what points really came in the paint last night?
Yeah.
Everybody that got in the paint was about a throwdown. And I understand it's about fan excitement and getting the fans cheering and all, but I mean, we've seen every dunk that you can ever make in a game. It's just like with the dunk contest. This is something that should be done either every 2 or every 4 years.
Yeah.
You run out of dunks, and everyone wants to always talk about the greatest dunkers of all time. The guy that was in the dunk contest 30 years ago could not even compete in a dunk contest today because of the athleticism of the players now compared to what it was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
They're leaner, they're taller, they're faster, and they're stronger. The guys couldn't compete from years ago. I mean, we've seen great dunk contests over the decades, but the time has changed. And even with what you saw in the dunk contest on Saturday night, how much further can you push it? You really can't. So the anticipation of something new coming along, you might get one new dunk every year that say, hey, wow, hadn't seen that one before.
Yeah.
But just the overall competitiveness of a dunk contest, I think the NBA needs to find something else to be more creative with at that time.
Well, that may be true, too. I actually enjoyed the dunk contest. It's almost like a good cup of coffee. How many cups of coffee can you drink? But people tend to drink them all the time. And for a lot of the young kids growing up, I mean, they're the ones that are making the NBA, to me, the contest was so wonderful because of the charities that they were helping. And it was almost at times like a college environment, Big C, where the charitable groups, they were cheering like Team LeBron or Team Giannis, and seeing that happen, I really enjoyed that. I also saw, just in watching some television leading up to the All-Star game, and they had some old-timers on, whether it's Dominique Wilkins or Michael Jordan, Spud Webb, going back to those guys, and seeing some of the young faces in the crowd that were really, they admire their basketball heroes. So I love that they have it every year. But I want to take you to one man that a lot of people were saying he's the new face of the NBA, Luka Doncic, Dallas Mavericks, the guard, 8 points. He was only 2 of 5 from three-point range, which is on average. He had 1 rebound, 4 assists. In as much as he can become a bright star, I know he's a young man, but 8 points for a guy that can drop about 30 in a game is as if he wasn't the alpha male on the court. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if the All-Star game is considered an alpha male game. I mean, this is a highlight game.
Yeah.
Look at what Luka Doncic does throughout the season. His numbers speak for themselves through the season. The All-Star game is an exhibition, and it's about athleticism in the All-Star game. It's not about pure basketball ability.
Yeah.
This is the reason why you don't see guys in the dunk contest playing in the All-Star game, because that's only about athletic ability. It's not about the total ability to play the game and be a complete team player. That's what Luka Doncic is. He's not, when you look at him throughout the season, he's not a highlight reel player.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day in the stats, when you look at the box score, you say, this is a guy that I want on my team.
Yep.
Is he going to run a roughneck game up and down the court? No, he's not. Larry Bird didn't do it in his heyday, even though he was one of the best players in the NBA. He wasn't one of those guys who was going to be on a fast break every time the ball broke out. But you get him in a half-court offense, he was going to knock it down more often than not. And that's where Luka Doncic is. When you look at the guys that everyone was enamored with in the All-Star game, it was about the guys dunking. It was about blocking some shots. It really wasn't about shooting. If you look at Trae Young from Atlanta, the second-year man that was drafted along with Luka Doncic, he only had 10 assists and 10 points in the game. But here's a guy who's one of the top three-point shooters in the NBA, but he couldn't knock anything down in the first half. So when you do that comparison of guys who do it night in and night out versus the guys who do it just in one game, and you spoke about Giannis's numbers. He was the MVP of the league last year, and most likely will be the MVP again this year. Could he knock down anything in the fourth quarter? No, he went scoreless.
Went scoreless. James Harden can't miss. It seems like he can't miss, of course, regular season games. The guard out of the Houston Rockets, 11 points, had 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks. And it looks as if he was going to hit the game winner. You talked about you hate seeing a team that can win by going to the free throw line, Big C. He had a pull-up three-pointer. I guess it was right at the end of the game. It was going to win the game for Team LeBron. At the same time, they called him for a foul, a push-off on Kyle Lowry, who was playing the game as if it was a regular season game. And Hart was saying, you haven't called a push-off or a charge all game. Why call it right now, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, you just made the point about Harden. Here's a guy who's averaging 37 points a game and can only muster 11 in the All-Star game. So does that diminish where he is as far as his league stature, being the leading scorer, scoring less than a third of the points he averages in a regular season game? I mean, like I said, in the fourth quarter with the officials, it was a question mark about did they understand what was going on. And I don't know. The officials seemed more lost than the players most of the time throughout the game.
Well, they were all-star officials, too. They wanted to have their names in the paper. Speaking of having a name in the paper, Ben Simmons, Philadelphia 76ers, the guard, 17 points. He had 8 of 9 from the floor, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. I think this kid can carry, or this young man can carry Philadelphia 76ers. I know his teammate Joel Embiid. Those two guys can be amazing. There's always rumors about guys getting along in life. Nobody gets along in life all the time, Big C. But I still like the game that Ben Simmons has. He seems like he's just a rising star that has such a big upside, Big C. Your thoughts?
But you know the best way to play defense on Ben Simmons is let him shoot from the outside. You don't even have to cover it. If you look at his points, they came in the paint. He was dunking the basketball. He was at the rim. You let him shoot outside beyond 15 feet, it's a huge question mark. And so you really don't have to guard him. You play zone defense. Ben Simmons, you know, as far as a big guard, he's a liability more than he is an asset to Philadelphia.
Wow, that's interesting. Just like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he made all of his points in the paint, too. Happened to be the NBA scoring leader, Big C, but he was 8 of 9.
No, you got to look at that Sky Hook. That Sky Hook was 15 to 16 feet. It was never in the paint.
But
he did dunk the basketball periodically. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar scored more points outside the paint than he did inside the paint in his NBA career.
It still wasn't three-pointers. I think a lot of guys, even if you're 2 feet outside of the paint, not everybody's going to shoot that three. When you think about the Joker out of Denver Nuggets, the center, he's a big man in Denver. Of course, it's an all-star game exhibition, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, and a steal. Now, to me, what I saw, especially because I'm just my own opinion, when I saw guys getting down to who's going to do what, it seemed like LeBron, of course, it was his team, but he was really being that vocal leader, too, and telling guys, you know, what to do with the ball. But when you think about, you know, the Joker out of Denver Nuggets, maybe their star player, you know, 5 points, is, again, still an exhibition game. Jason Tatum, who had dropped 39 points in the game against the Los Angeles Clippers, Big C. Of course, all-star exhibition game. The forward for the Boston Celtics, only 6 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists, and it's still. But maybe he was tired from dropping all those points against the Clippers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, see, that's my point I was making earlier. This is an exhibition game. And you got to look at the minutes that guys played. Like I said, there was no substitutions in the fourth quarter.
No.
So the guys who played in the fourth quarter had a greater opportunity to increase their point total than the guys who did not. And you think about the first quarter, the substitutions were not coming in throughout this game. You think about when you're running with a running clock, you don't have time for substitution. So when you look at the point totals, they're very misleading.
It can be because, again, it's exhibition. A player that I really loved seeing have a good game is because he was the ambassador for the change Chris Paul, Oklahoma City Thunder, a guard player, actually dropped 23 points. He was 7 of 11 from three-point range, 2 rebounds, 6 assists. And he made a strong case for MVP, especially in the second half. That I think what I really liked about Chris Paul, we saw a dunk. I think that's the first dunk he's had since December of 2015. But like you always say, you don't have to be a dunk extraordinaire to be a good basketball player. But it was good seeing Chris Paul, since he was the ambassador of this game, having a good showing. Big C, your thoughts?
And actually, he should have been the MVP over Kawhi Leonard in this game. I think the voters got that wrong when you look at what he contributed to the game overall, offensively and defensively. And he was effective in the fourth quarter where Kawhi Leonard wasn't.
Yeah.
The votes came in early, and they didn't wait for the end of the game to come in.
Yeah, they didn't wait for a lot of things. But, Kawhi, it's easy to say his name because he dropped 30 points more than anybody else. As we go across the pond to Team Giannis, Big C, Antetokounmpo, Milwaukee Bucks. He's a forward. He dropped 25 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks. It's almost like a regular game for Giannis. But I do ask you this thought. I thought he did expend himself a lot on defense, and he played that fourth quarter as well as it was a real playoff game. So he didn't score, in the end, but he was good early scoring. In fact, he was in the final period, he was only 0 of 2 shooting, but he was also that big guy down in the paint that even told King James LeBron, "You're not scoring on me, Big C." Your thoughts?
Well, he played a lot more defense in this game, as well as a lot of people did in the fourth quarter, something that's highly unusual in one of these type of competitions. He made his defensive presence felt, but it also showed that he's not that clutch player offensively when you need him in crunch time.
Yeah, I think he's still a young man, and he's still going to put on some size. He has that extra something that he's going to find. Might take just a little bit more weightlifting, but I think he's going to get there. Joel Embiid, Philadelphia, 76. He's a center. He had 22 points. He was 8 of 13 in field goals. He had 10 rebounds. When you think about how good Joel can be, 10 points in the fourth quarter, it actually led all players on both teams. So maybe Giannis wasn't doing his thing, but they were trying to find Joel Embiid, and there were times I looked at, and this is the All-Star exhibition game, there were times there were 4 players on Joel Embiid. That means the outside shot was open, but they respected his prowess down in the paint. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said earlier, when you have the 50-plus dunks in a game, and that's what Joel Embiid was doing, laying around the rims, it makes it very difficult for other players to compete against him. But this is what you look for in that type of game. You're looking for highlight plays, and anybody can knock down the three-point shot. We saw a lot of attempts there, but fans want to see the dunk.
Yeah, they want to see the dunk. They want to see the three. I really miss Steph Curry not being in that game, and of course he'll be back next year. And also, there's a lot of times, there was no Kevin Durant, so seeing players that have actually played in the NBA Finals over the last couple of years, that was absolutely missing. But the fourth quarter alone made it seem like you really didn't miss those guys, even though I did. Pascal Siakam, from your good friends up in Toronto, Canada, the forward had dropped 15 points. He was 7 of 10 from the floor and 6 rebounds. Remind me of a couple of games he had last year in the Finals versus Golden State. A player that I thought was always a talented all-star player, but didn't see a lot of them when he was in Charlotte. Kemba Walker, Boston Celtics guard, Big C. He dropped 23 points. He was 5 of 11 of a three-point basket, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I think if Boston's going to go far in the playoffs, they got to make sure that this gentleman you want him to have the shot. I know they have a lot of good young players on Boston, but I'm really impressed with Kemba Walker, how he plays. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but Jason Tatum is still the leader of that team in Boston. When you look at how Jason Tatum's numbers have increased since Kyrie Irving has left, he's gone up, scoring 10 more points a game than what he was when Kyrie Irving is there. They trust in the young bodies that are there in Boston, and he's benefited from Kemba Walker being around because he's allowing him to get his shots off.
Yeah, they're allowing that to happen too. So I really appreciate just a lot of the young players. Trae Young, Atlanta Hawks, the guard, had 10 points in the game. He was 2 for 3 for 3 points and 3 rebounds and 10 assists. And then, of course, Chris Middleton dropped in 5 points, 1 rebound, 2 assists. There's another player that I really like, Rudy Gobert out of the Utah Jazz. He's really kind of wasting his time in Utah, just my opinion, Big C. The big center, 21 points. He was 10 of 11 field goals, 11 rebounds, and 2 assists. But really, he's missing out on the opportunity to shine. in Denver. Not in Denver, but in Utah, and that's just my opinion. One guy I thought would do better was Jimmy Butler, Miami Heat, the forward. He dropped 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. And then we'll close before the Big C pause. I want to get your thoughts on your friend from the Toronto Raptors, Kyle Lowry, who was taking charges. He may have taken as many charges in the All-Star game as he did in a regular game. He dropped 13 points, had 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 steals, and maybe forced the King LeBron's team to have about 5 charges, but they didn't call 3 of them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was something different that you normally don't see in one of these type of competitions. Team players playing defense, taking charges. Normally they just let players have a free run to the basket.
Yeah.
So this was something different that we're accustomed to seeing in an all-star game. Some guys want to play defense, some guys want to be cheerleaders.
Yeah, they want it. Sometimes it's okay to be both. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe. What we're going to do is come up on the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. When we come back, we're going to talk about more sports and how great this great month of February is, known as Black History Month. We'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com, and an app that I love is called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Also launching the Big C Channel Real Estate. We are in spring of 2020 having a real estate show where we can, if you're a broker, you can list your properties in various markets throughout the country, looking for 100 real estate brokers to list their properties on TV. Really makes your agent stand out. And if you're an agent and you go into your listing, you can tell them you can put their properties on TV as opposed to on the internet. And a lot of brokers are really digging that idea. Big C, I know we talk so much about basketball. Before I ask you a few things on college basketball, I want to go back to something you said about the slam dunk contest. You would rather see it skip a year or two, Big C, your thoughts?
Yes, I would, because, eventually you're going to see a player get injured trying to do some of these elaborate dunks. And as from a fan's perspective, once you've seen something, you've seen something. There's really no excitement in coming back with it. It reminds me so much of the home run derby in baseball.
Yeah.
When you think about the home run derby, all this splash in one night, and the rest of the season is flat for those players that expended so much energy in that home run derby. And as I said before, you don't see the superstars in the league competing in this slam dunk contest. You win the slam dunk contest, you're normally not back the next year. It's a one-and-done deal for the winners. And so there's nobody going in defending their title. So what is it when you're not defending a title? It really lacks esteem at that point. And so that's what I look at with the slam dunk contest. Let some anticipation build up over 2 to 4 years between dunk contests.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own flavor of Kool-Aid. I think I like to see it every year. Some players won't be around in 2 years. They'll be injured or they'll be traded or will be out of the league. And so everybody...
There's always a new line of players coming into the league. And as I say, the guys in the slam dunk contest are not playing in the All-Star game. So you're not looking at All-Star players in the dunk contest.
Why do you think that, for example, Kobe Bryant, he's won an All-Star contest. I think he did that as a rookie. We've seen Michael Jordan. We've seen Dominique Wilkins, Hall of Famers, All-Star players almost every year.
But in the last 5 years, you have not seen anybody in the dunk contest that has played in the All-Star game.
Why do you think they don't?
And the guys that were in the dunk contest 20 and 30 years ago couldn't compete in the dunk contest today.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, why do they not? Why don't we see LeBron James in the slam dunk competition? Or guys of that ilk? Why do we not see them? We did I mean, that's a good point.
As I said earlier,
Yeah.
it's one and done. You win a dunk contest, there's nothing to come back and prove. If you come back and lose the dunk contest,
Yeah.
the claim that you got from winning the dunk contest is gone now.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I would think they have nothing to gain because they're
That's my point.
Yeah,
You have nothing to gain. You come
Yeah.
back and lose. What did you gain from losing?
yeah. At the same time, I don't think it should retract. I think people don't have to watch it, but I think it's such a popular event that a lot of guys love seeing that. I want to transition to this thought, and I know you said someone might get hurt, but that's the case in anything. Anyone can get hurt every day. Why drive a car? People can
But
get
that's
hurt.
an exhibition.
Yeah.
It's understandable when you get injured in a game.
Yeah,
It's just like in preseason in football. When players get injured in preseason, people are saying, okay, why are they playing so many preseason games? Why was he still out there after playing one or two series and getting injured in the second or third quarter?
yeah,
It's the same thing in one of these dunk contests. And we're going to see it eventually. Somebody's going to get hurt, and it's going to end their career. For what cause?
yeah. Yep, that's very true. I mean, there's a risk you take just by getting outside sometimes, especially driving on California highways. But I understand the point, and everybody has to make their own choice. I do want to get into this thought about regular NBA. Again, congratulations to all the contestants, Team LeBron and Team Giannis, and really appreciate how many people were affected by the $400,000 from Team LeBron and the $100,000 for Team Giannis, and seeing how so many young people have benefited from the money. I just hope the money all goes to a good cause, and they really help the people that need the help. NBA news: Cleveland Cavaliers coach John Whelan has discussed possibilities of stepping down from the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're only 14 wins and 40 losses. That's the worst record in the Eastern Conference, behind only what the Golden State Warriors, but they're tanking. Golden State is at 12-43 for the worst record in the NBA. Golden State's doing it for strategy. I think it's become the norm in Cleveland. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's become the norm in Cleveland, but what has Cleveland had when LeBron James has not been there? They've always been the worst team in the NBA. Prior to him arriving, after he left and went to Miami, he came back, left again. They all of a sudden became the worst team in the NBA once again.
Yeah.
When you look at where Cleveland is and you bring Beeline in, Beeline is a guy that at 67 years of age had dealt with college kids his entire life. Guys that he had power over that didn't have any money other than the stipend check that they were getting.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden at 67, he's going to walk in and try to coach guys a third of his age that are multimillionaires and tell them how they should respond.
Yeah.
He lost the team back in January when he called all the players thugs on the team.
Yeah.
Because in college he could get away with that, but he could not do it in the NBA doing the defamation act that college coaches use on athletes all the time. He's out of his element. I mean, when you think about the number of coaches from college that have come to the NBA,
Yeah.
you think about your boy down there in Kentucky, Calipari.
Yeah.
You think about Jerry Tarkanian. You think about the guy that Latrell Sprewell choked out
Carlissimo,
there in
P.J.
Golden
Carlissimo.
State.
He was doing the Hamlet
Many
maneuver.
coaches have come from college basketball thinking that they could bring that mantra of intimidation to the NBA.
Yeah.
These grown men don't tolerate that because they will get rid of you before you get rid of them.
Yeah. Cleveland's been, as you mentioned, they struggled a lot, but they do know how to start a good fire, Big C. If you ever leave them, they'll set your clothes on fire. The good old boy LeBron James learned that, but he still went back to them no matter what. Sometimes there's love-hate relationship in that too. But we wish them well no matter what they decide to do with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to step down to the world of college basketball for a moment. And when you think about this, numbers can be deceiving. They just always can be. College basketball is number 3, San Diego State. They stay unbeaten. They're 26-0 now. They're ranked number 3 in the country, just 3 wins away from a perfect regular season, with remaining games with Utah State, Nevada, and Boise State. But as I look at their schedule, I don't find any top 10 teams on their schedule. I'd still wish them well, but I think if you were to put them in the conference like the Big Ten instead of the Mountain West, or if they were in the Pac-12 as opposed to the Mountain West or the SEC or the ACC, I don't think we see 26-0, but 26-0 is still 26-0, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're one of the second most dominant team, if not the most dominant team on the West Coast. You look at Gonzaga, the only team on the West Coast is close to them. Gonzaga has been a perennial power out there in the WAC for a long, long time.
Yeah.
But San Diego State, their toughest game left on their schedule is going to be Boise State, as far as them being second in the conference behind them. But, just a tremendous run and promise. They're going to get a number one seed if they can remain undefeated and win their conference championship, once they get into the postseason, Charlton.
Yeah.
But at 26-0, that's nothing to sneeze at in college basketball.
Nothing to sneeze at unless you put them in a conference where you have several teams in the top 20 Big C. But we'll see what happens. I still wish them well. I remember watching the game. It was down on the farm at Maple Pavilion at Stanford, where I first started keeping stats way back in the 90s. And I'll never forget how there were times when Stanford was ranked number 2 in the country. They came off a season where they had lost, I believe it was to an East Coast power. I want to say it was Villanova. And what they realized is they had to get stronger down in the paint. So even though they're ranked high in the country, when they run up against teams that actually lift weights, sometimes those rankings can fall off. College basketball rankings, Dayton University, they cracked the top 5 on the Associated Press top 25 for the first time in 64 years. And I know they were not on the schedule with San Diego State, but it marks the first time since the 1955-1956 season that the Flyers, Big C, they've reached a top 5 spot in the AP poll. Dayton is 23-2, and I would say they would probably beat San Diego State in best of 3, and they have won 14 straight games, and it's just 6 wins away from going undefeated in conference play for the first time in program history. Big C, your thoughts?
And they got a potential top 5 pick and top in the forward that they have on their team, Charlton. And Dayton has done a tremendous job this season, in getting into the top 5. And you think of what it takes to get there with just 2 losses on the season. But it's great for college basketball to have 2 teams that have not been considered power teams in the country, Charlton, all of a sudden crack the top 5. This reminds me of Loyola Chicago a couple years ago when they made the run into Elite 8 down in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And actually, they waited all the way to the Final Four down in Houston. So when you think about college basketball, parity is something that's in college basketball where it's not in football.
Yeah.
Just like you saw in the All-Star game in the NBA, it's not always about who can dunk the most baskets, Charlton. It's about a team that can go out there and shoot the best on the floor. You talked about Loyola Marymount early in the game, early in the show when we introduced it. This was a team that had nobody on their lineup, Charlton, more than 6'8" years ago when the late Hank Gathers had passed away. But they made it all the way to the Elite 8 with nobody more than 6'8" on their roster because they could shoot the ball.
Yeah.
They had athletic ability, and that's what you possess in Dayton and San Diego State now is guys who can go out there and shoot. The dynamics of basketball has changed where the game is not as physical as it used to be, just like in football.
Yeah.
So it's not always where you have to match up physically with those Power 5 conferences. Is can you shoot the ball efficiently enough to make them play defense?
Yeah, that's what we often find, especially as you look at shooting. Again, slam dunk is about being physically strong, and like Daryl Dawkins back in the day, even Karl Malone, he wasn't a three-point shooter, Karl Malone. He would always give that late kick to create some space, Big C. Imagine if he were playing in the All-Star game against Lowry. He would have kicked him a couple of times and then went up for the dunk. But we know sometimes if you lift a lot of weights, you don't want to shoot threes. You want to impose your will. And speaking of performance and people who don't live for the slam dunk competition, the best performance, if you saw it or didn't see it, it was last week in women's college basketball. Coastal Carolina's DJ Williams had 2 of them in a 3-day span. The 5'10" senior guard scored a record 51 points in Thursday's win over Troy. She added a 3rd triple-double in program history in Saturday's victory over South Alabama. Just hard to find those programs on television, Big C, your thoughts.
But that's the greatness of athleticism in women's college basketball, and I often like to talk about the ladies on our show, Charlton, because they play such a great brand of fundamental basketball, something that's lacking on the men game. So many guys are trying to make these highlight shows that come on at night, and they lack the ability to have continuity with their teammates. But when you talk about Miss Williams going out, getting 51 points, now you don't get that from the men on a college basketball game. 51 points in a night. And this is somebody who's not hogging the basketball, that's shooting very efficiently. And then turn around 3 days later, Charlton, and get a triple-double.
Yeah.
You're talking about outstanding fundamental. We talk about the top teams in the country. but there are great women basketball players all over this nation playing, and we saw that in Coastal Carolina over the week.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot like we've talked so many times about what conference has the most money and how much television plays into conferences having money. It's not necessarily that they play a better brand of sports, but they do have the viewership or those Nielsen ratings you talk about, and that brings a lot of people in too. I want to just jump, if we can, to the world of Major League Baseball. And to me, everybody has their own opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Commissioner, Rob Manfred, he put his foot in a bat in his mouth as he's trying to explain away the scandal of the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox during the last two World Series titles. I've always contended that if you're not cheating, you're not trying. We just did this program last week, Big C, where we went back to cheating scandals. It goes back to 1906, Big C, even longer than that, back in the 1800s, where people have always found a way to cheat at baseball, whether it's putting some spit on that fastball, Big C, whether it's some pine tar that they have. I mean, corking the bat. We've seen the cheating scandals is nothing new. To me, if you're going to say that we admonish them, they pay a fine. If you don't take something away, if you're driving and see the judge too many times, they take away your license. They don't say, hey, bad behavior, and go out and drive again. You get, I think, 3 chances in a year to get your license. If you get pulled over, they suspend it. That means you cannot drive. So I think if you were to take some players, suspend them for a year if they're cheating, but they don't want to do that because that's a Pandora's box for all the teams. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't think it's a Pandora's box for all the teams, Charlton. It's something that was wrong and egregious by the organization. So when you look at that and they say, well, it will hurt the organization if you suspend everybody. No, it won't, because there's a thing called a farm system.
Yeah.
So the farm system is in place to be a feeder system for the Major League Ball Club.
Yeah.
But you just can't walk in and fire a general manager, fire the manager of the team also, Charlton, and said, that fixed the problem.
Yeah.
That was the problem, because the players are the one who have to execute the actions of the manager and the general manager. Now, I'm reminded a few years ago when the New Orleans Saints had Bountygate.
Yeah.
You suspended the GM, you suspended the head coach, the defensive coordinator, and a couple players on that team, Charlton.
Yeah.
So this is where Rob Manfred dropped the ball at and the bat in this scenario, is that that Houston Astros everyday players were involved in this. The pitchers, not so. But the everyday players that were in the lineup, those players should have been suspended for the entire season. That's only 9 players.
Yeah.
8 players, actually, when you're looking at it. There's 8 players that should have been suspended for the entire season. Now, you have a bench of players that you can play as well as 8 other players you can call up from the minor league system. But what you do wrong by suspending firing a general manager and a manager is giving a message to the players that what you did was acceptable.
Yeah.
And then the owner said, well, I don't know if it altered the state of the game. It did, because of what you did. But Manfred, as the leader, the reason why he didn't make a move beyond what he did, because he's at the mercy of the owners. Now, he didn't make this decision by himself. He's just a spokesperson, just like Roger Goodell is for the owners,
Yeah.
is that this is what you're going to do in this situation. We're going to go out there, we're going to throw you under the bus. But we're not going to suspend players because we all cheat in some capacity. And if you get them, not only are you going to have to get the Houston Astros, but now you got to go do the Boston Red Sox also.
Yeah.
So you're going to take one of the historical franchises in Major League Baseball, and you're going to suspend all their starting lineup. They're going to be gone from baseball for a year. This is the reason why the move from Rob Manfred was not more egregious in going after players than what it was. This was a vote amongst 30 owners,
Yeah.
not one owner of the Houston Astros, 30 owners throughout Major League Baseball. You are a flunky. You are a puppet. He's their Pinocchio.
Yeah.
So he was their Pinocchio standing up there trying to explain out of this situation. But believe me, he is a spokesperson for Major League Baseball, not the commissioner.
Yeah, I remember it was back, I think it was the former Hall of Famer Jackie Robinson called out Major League Baseball for its lack of black managers. That was October 15th, 1972. And we still have, that's an issue that is still persistent in Major League Baseball. But there's more talk about how do we fix the cheating scandal by a couple of teams when almost everybody can find something that they did wrong. and there's more passion from mainstream media as to the statement that the late Jackie Robinson made, back in the day. So I think baseball's always cheated, especially when it comes to creating fairness and equality. But that's just my opinion. Big C, I wanna go to another sport that I think a lot of people love, and we always want to fix it. It's a love-hate relationship with it, though. The NFL just had a great Super Bowl 54, in my opinion. The NFL wants a 17 games. It will likely be part of what is proposed in the new collective bargaining agreement. But players push today to delay it until 2022 or 2023. So what do the players need to ask for in turn, Big C? Your thoughts?
What the players need to ask for from the NFL, from the league, is that they need to ask for lifetime health insurance.
Yeah.
Major League Baseball, if you play 3 games in the Major League, you get lifetime health insurance for you and your family.
Yeah.
In the NFL, your health insurance runs out 5 years from the last game that you played in the NFL. So that's what the NFL players don't get. And you have to qualify for your pension to get that 5 years of health insurance. So you have to be at least 3 years in the league to qualify for your health insurance. It's not like that in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
So the NFL players need to smarten up. I mean, it's the most unintelligent, and I don't mean any harm by that.
Yeah.
But they're the most unintelligent league that's out there through their representation. Is that they're out there fighting for pay increases. That money will eventually run out. When that money runs out, and even if you have money when you retire,
yeah,
you have to take the money out of your own pocket to pay for these egregious health issues that you have as a former player. This is why the players need to fight for lifetime health insurance. Take a little less money. I know everyone's talking about who's going to be the first $40 million player. Take a little less money, leave it in health insurance.
Yeah.
I know salaries are going to always go up through the collective bargaining, but you need health insurance. Not only that, you need an increase in pension play. So the monies that you're trying to get up front, you need to leave some of that on the back end to cover health insurance, and you need to cover pension play. And if they do go to this 17-game season eventually, they need to shut it down to 2 preseason games and take their lumps at that point. But you're going to know who's in your lineup. You know 90% of your lineup when you go to preseason.
Yeah.
So it needs to go down to 2 preseason games, increase the health coverage for life, and then pension needs to be increased, and also put some money back in there for the old players.
Yeah, that would be more philanthropic than a lot of people probably care to be, Big C, but it does make a lot of sense. I think the XFL, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't see a preseason with the XFL. They did all their training by the time they kicked off on day one.
You don't even have a preseason in college football, high school football. So the NFL, the preseason in the NFL is nothing really to write home about. It's more of an exhibition. The owners make money off of the gate in that. And so to have a preseason that really doesn't benefit anybody, because think about the starters. How many games do they play? They normally come in the 3rd game and play a quarter.
Yeah, it's all about getting you got to put it on TV so people can see it, Big C. It's never really been about the health of the players longevity-wise. They want to make the helmets a little bit safer, etc. But thinking of money and putting money aside, Washington Redskins' new head coach, Ron Rivera, and his wife, Stephanie, they raised more than $30,000 from 9 years of accumulation with the Carolina Panthers for charity in a garage sale ahead of his move to the Washington, D.C. area and to coach the Washington Redskins. And thanks to items that were donated by the great Cam Newton, former league MVP, Luke Kuechly, and Greg Olsen, Big C, Rivera and his wife, they raised $30,237 after more than 3,000 people showed up to the garage sale. And the money will go towards a new campus and research facility for I think it's the Charlotte, Carolina Humane Society. That's a good cause, Big C. Your thoughts?
Charlton, when we think about so many displaced animals and abused animals and have the Riveras to reach out to the Humane Society, and they've always been a member of that because they have 2 rescue dogs that they keep in their household, Charlton, that they rescued from the Humane Society. So being able to give back, we always see the negative spotlight on the NFL players and associates in the news, and they don't talk about the positive things that NFL players or NBA players do. As we saw the donations of charitable funds from the players from the All-Star game, we see that from the Rivera family, Charlton, in that they're selling all these items that they've accumulated in their time in Carolina because they're going to a new franchise. And they felt that they wanted to leave it in the community and let those people that back the Carolina Panthers be able to enjoy that over the years, Charlton. And it goes to a great cause, the Humane Society there in Charlotte.
Yeah, it does go to a great cause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The app that I love is by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. What I really appreciate is that so many things are growing in the world of sports and television. The Big C team launching the real estate channel for brokers that want to list their properties on TV and different markets throughout the country. We'll have that launching in the spring of 2020. You know what? Words I've heard growing up that sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words will never hurt me. But words can be hurtful. And going back to the NFL, which wants to play more games, which is going to lead to people being injured, that's just a fact. Will the Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns situation with Mason Rudolph and the Pittsburgh Steelers, will that helmet controversy ever go away? Even if you call someone an egregious name, that's bad, but that's happened since the beginning of time, especially the Emancipation Proclamation. People get through that, Big C. But at some point in time, if you don't clean it up in your own community, why make us think about it when somebody outside the community does it? That's just my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as I look at the alleged scenario that occurred, Charlton, these horrific words are said all the time throughout sporting events, from the fans as well as players back and forth to each other. And in the heat of battle, and I got to question Mason Rudolph. I know that Mike Tomlin came to his defense, and he's defending him, but the thing about it is that the NFL has not come to the defense of Mason Rudolph in this incident. And with all the mics and cameras that we have in the NFL nowadays, and you hear everything from a guy sneezing on the sideline to everything that's said, they're killing mics.
Yeah.
The NFL has audio of whatever occurred in this incident. And the reason, personally, that I feel that the NFL doesn't want to go further with disclosure is that when you sit there and you see that African-American players make up 72% of the composite of the NFL, and we understand the racial divide that this country has, is that this is something that you really don't want to let out, whether this was or was not said. And like I said, the NFL could quash it just by releasing all the audio, and we know who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth.
Yeah.
But as a former player, I was talking with one of my kids today, and I was telling them that I still feel bad about some things I said to players of my own culture and opposite cultures during my playing days, Charlton.
Yeah.
This was decades ago. And so I know that hasn't changed. Players get heated, and they say things to each other all the time and against each other all the time.
Yeah.
So I can't verify what was and what wasn't said, but I know over time history has not changed completely. When we think about all the risks that African-American players have had to deal with in every sport that they played, whether you were the first black that was in the NHL, the first black that was in the NBA, the first black that was in Major League Baseball, as well as the first black that was in the NFL.
Yeah.
You always had to deal with the racial divide and racial epithets that were thrown at you. And you also look at, as we look at a lot of players that have been drafted recently, and they're going back and they're wiping off their social media pages.
Yeah.
And they're using the excuse, well, I said this when I was younger.
Yeah.
I was a teenager. I didn't know what I was saying. I was dumber back then. You got to look at where players grew up at.
Yeah.
And know that in that region of the country, these racial epithets are still used today.
Yeah.
And they're used with gusto. And so when you go back home during all season, you're still using it. You ever wonder why there's no black owners in the NFL, Charlton?
Yep.
Just as there are a limited number of black head coaches, because the racial epithets are used in the meeting.
Yeah.
People won't address it, but it's the gorilla in the room. No pun intended. And so these racial epithets are used. And like I said, the NFL could quash this. If Goodell wanted to be forthright, he would release all of the audio to clear this up.
Yeah, that'll be released as soon as POTUS releases his tax returns, Big C. So, don't hold your breath on that. I say if you clean it up in your own community first and then hold the outside communities, equally at force. In the last minute, the NFL for the first time has 3 potential starting African-American quarterbacks. That would be free agents, the great Dak Prescott, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, and if you think about it, there's even Geno Smith, Brett Hundley, Joe Webb, and you could throw Marcus Mariota into that for good measure, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's a total of 7 minority quarterbacks, Charlton, that will be on the free agent market, the highest number ever in the history of the NFL in an offseason, that you have 7 minority quarterbacks that could potentially be starters in the NFL. I know only about half of those will get an opportunity at a starting job, but you think about the rise and the influence of the African-American quarterback, Charlton, it's becoming evident now that in free agency, they become a valuable commodity.
It really has. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, on this day in black history, we got to go back and look at the first formal protest against slavery, February 17th, 1688, where a body of English Americans in Germantown, Pennsylvania, the Quakers' monthly meeting, put up a historical protest to fight against slavery and the slave trade.
And we are glad that people stood up and said, no, not in our neighborhood, Big C. You can say it too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.